r/ask Reddit. Therapists of Reddit, what's something that a client has taught you, unknowingly, that you still treasure? In general, that humans can experience an incredible amount of trauma, loss, overall suffering, and not only continue to exist, but continue to find meaning and even contentment in their lives. It's helped me to reframe my own trauma in a more helpful way and also made me less fearful of what my future may hold, recognizing that we can tolerate much more than we think we can. Speech therapist, so not a psych, but did learn sometimes the things that worry you as a therapist. Don't worry the client. And if they're not worried, you shouldn't be worried because you're there to help them, not impose on them. I had a client who was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. He is 15 and refused to take medication for it. His grandmother came to stay with him from India and together they began meditating. My first session with him was 2 weeks after his grandmother came. He was in such a bad place. He wasn't eating and was having panic attacks. He was adamant about not taking medicine despite his bad state. I helped him a little through CBT. But it was the meditation that was helping him over the next 6 weeks that I worked with him. It was amazing to see this young man come back to life. He started to show interest in doing things again and you could see the life return to his eyes. At the last few sessions he was laughing and his mother was saying that she has not seen that side of him in over a year. I have heard about meditation helping people with depression and anxiety, but I was a skeptic. This client showed me just how powerful meditation is. That everyone suffers in some way or another. The circumstances leading up to the suffering are different, but the underlying emotional pain is the same. You can't compare circumstances with others and this comparison often leads to more misery. But you can connect with people by sitting with their suffering. Edit. A word. When talking about two people being in a relationship, a child I was working with described it as 1 + 1 = 2. Changed the perspective of my other half looking at two people in a relationship as whole. I now use two distinct wholes, one person, who choose to come together as two. Going through these replies is kinda a mini therapy session. I'm not quite getting it right, but a foster parent recently said, he's in the ring fighting, and the opponent is himself, and all the people supporting him don't even see what he's battling against. He's his own worst enemy. It hit me in the feels because I do the same dang thing. I want to make it slightly more poetic and make it into a wall hanging poster of some kind. I'm a mental health therapist in a high school. One of my clients has CP and has almost no mobility. She taught me to stop treating doing things for myself as a chore, making a meal, exercise, housework etc. because I'm lucky that my body allows me to take care of myself. Human beings are shockingly determined and resilient, even if it's not in the direction you'd expect. No one wakes up and decides I'm gonna go kick puppies today. People are assholes by design. Someone taught them this behavior is okay somehow. And sometimes it was through pain. Find that core, and you can find empathy for almost anyone. If you can feel empathy for someone, then you might just be able to speak with and connect with them. Something I inadvertently taught my therapist is when I'm really struggling to start my day, I divide it up into quest objectives a la video games, i.e. shower, breakfast and dress, get to work on time, complete at least 3 briefs today, and so on and so forth. But it really helps me set short-term goals for getting through the day. She told me she has subsequently used this method with other clients and it's worked well. I'm a therapist in a psychiatric hospital and my patients have taught me how thin the line is between being mentally healthy and ill. Many of my patients were healthy and high functioning until one event happened to them. That could be anyone. We are all just one incident away from being permanently ill. I am grateful and humbled by the tenacity of my patients. And for each day I am healthy. Without exception, I'll learn from every single one of my clients. I've learned that 12-year-olds can think and talk with the wisdom of an 80-year-old, and you can be in your 60s and have lived with stunting trauma for decades. I've learned that life can beat someone every which way and give them the shittiest deck of cards and they still find things that make them smile. By far though, the number one thing I've learned that clients across demographics including religion, nationality, SES, age and gender desire is connection. which usually boils down to being seen, heard, validated and understood. It is a universal need and or want to feel connected. Yes. Even you. Self-proclaimed ultra-introvert who never needed nobody. My folks with schizophrenia have taught me the power of truthful, compassionate response, a real speaking from the heart. Even if a person is psychotic, they know bullshit when they hear it. And they know if you don't care. About the Waste Management Services of New Jersey. I'm a therapist for children with autism. These kids go to school and then therapy 5 days a week, adding up to 10 hours a day. More than some working adults. Most of the kids at least. They work hard to increase their skill sets. I have struggled with severe anxiety and still struggle with it sometimes. While I'm teaching them life skills, they teach me perseverance through tough days and to smile and keep going even through the mistakes. These kids never fail to amaze me and I'm so proud to say I work with them. I was the patient, but during an early session I mentioned the chaplain quote, "A day without laughter is a day wasted," and my therapist had never heard that before and said they were going to use that. I saw it as a quote hanging on their wall soon thereafter. I was with a patient who said, "I'm your most important patient, because you're with me right now." I've taken that with me, no matter how busy I am. I try to focus on that one patient like I have all the time in the world. I work with a lot of grad students, which means I learn a lot about various research projects in areas from archaeology to vet med to communications. As a researcher myself, I always enjoy learning more about other areas. The biggest thing I take away from all my sessions is how amazingly resilient and optimistic people inherently are. When we push through all the negative thoughts and faulty beliefs that keep us stuck, our core is hope and promise for the future. Small children are the best examples of this. They can have experienced horrific traumas and come out on the other side well adjusted and having learned to develop healthy attachments. I'm amazed every day by my clients. I'm a former mental health social worker, and though I have learned much from my clients, I value the perspective of someone with schizophrenia most. They understand the fragility of reality, the defining attributes of perspective, and the power of creativity. Not a therapist, but do targeted case management. The most profound thing said to me was, "I'm just trying to deal with the shit that gets me stuck." Which made me realize everyone has shit that gets them stuck and that seeking help for that is not a sign of weakness. Teenage client that 9 therapists had attended with nothing except things thrown at them. They sent me down cause I was new and I just listened. I spent 30 minutes with them. At the end they told me never to quit my job. I have lived experience of mental health issues and my self-esteem is often not great. Add in the imposter syndrome every therapist tends to get and my confidence isn't always the best. That client taught me I am in the right career. I will be forever grateful for them. I work with college students, freshmen all the way through final years of PhD programs, med school, etc. I'm amazed by their constant desire for knowledge. 18-year and 40-year. It doesn't matter. There is an information lust in all of them. It makes me more passionate about my field and I go to trainings and conferences thrilled to learn thanks to them. It's incredible. The difference in my mental state from working out patients to working exclusively with the student population is amazing. They've saved my career. That you can't solve every problem. I specialize in suicide. So I've learned an extensive amount about what makes people want to stop living along with what keeps people going. It's fascinating to know the depths of pain and yet to see them still have a glimmer of hope that things will be different. My clients always inspire hope in me. It's bittersweet. I had child PT that thought that she was overweight. I explained to her that her weight includes her muscle and organs and bones. I taught her that muscle is much denser than fat. I told her a fun fact that her head weight's 8 pounds. She thought she was all fat. Her face lit up. I was sad that she was so concerned with her worth in terms of weight. Insert feminist rant here, but that I got to teach her. I love that part of my job includes teaching people like this. This week I had a client in group tell me that a way she began to improve her self-esteem is to playfully wink at herself in the mirror every morning. Simple, yet effective, I guess. put a serious tag on this if it's not too late. Somewhat of an opposite answer I'm giving here. I saw a therapist for a little over a year before I unknowingly joined the same community club as them. It was an elite, local community club in which your reputation mattered. While I understand client-patient privilege, this particular therapist didn't allude to my personal issues or our therapy sessions in any way, in private or public conversation during meetings. It was almost as if it were two separate lives. It taught me that you are not your trauma and it doesn't need to define your day-to-day life. As a therapist, I appreciate so much about this whole post. All feelings can be good or bad in the right doses. Fear in small doses can get you out of your safe zone. Love in big doses can make you lose yourself. Obligatory, not a therapist, but a patient who'd like to think that I teach her things. I often express my issues through humor. For humor, I tend to use a lot of made up words or meme lingo which she doesn't really understand. I teach her all sorts of things and what they mean. However, she has a very thick Hispanic accent. We live in the US and can't really pronounce some words well, which makes it even better for me. We did a project one time where she had me or a friend draw turtles on my arm when I felt like self-harming, because turtles are my favorite animal. But she pronounces it turtle and I'll never correct her on it. Anyways, she once told me to yeet my negative emotions. I love her. And I hope that she really is learning some stuff from me, lol. Wasn't a client, but someone coming to see them with us. Don't feel guilty about calling for help and ending up here. I would rather see you here every week asking for help and fighting than to know you stopped fighting and those thoughts won. Just today someone said to me, I tell myself all the time if I can stay sober for the next 30 minutes I'm going to make it. Sometimes I have to tell myself that more than once. But I make it every time. It really got to me today. That little saying has so much meaning behind it for so many things. It put in perspective for me that dealing with certain issues is a minute by minute thing. But I can make it no matter what. I had a 17-year-old tell me that he wanted to be a therapist. Until then, I thought he was barely even listening to me. It just took a while to click. He's a great kid, and it made me feel like my work was worthwhile. I don't think there's been anything unknowingly that my patients taught me. I have learned a lot from my patients, both unrelated to the therapy and also about it. I pretty much always try to tell my patients what they taught me in the moment, and if it's a therapeutically relevant thing, ask if I can tell others, with the credit of another patient of mine taught me a thing that might be helpful for you. But learning something in general, not unknowingly, happens a lot. I was the patient in this case, but my therapist was working with me after I had cancer and she was also a cancer survivor. She was with me through getting my survivor tattoo, which helped me process my emotions. Shortly before we parted ways, I was moving. She told me she had decided to plan her own survivor tattoo. It was cool. Not a therapist, but my psychologist did ask me if he could share what I said to his future clients as he was surprised. I basically was one of the worst cases of depression he had seen. From what he let on, my life was shit, everyone around me was shit, I had been through abuse and just everything kept going wrong, and on top of that I am disabled. Whilst talking to him I said even though I wanted to die now, I kind of have learned to cherish the pain and see it as an important part of life and growth. I don't think life without any pain whatsoever would be great. I didn't think much of it, but he asked my permission to share that with others because he felt he couldn't otherwise. We got along pretty well. He talked about his family life with me at times, was a chill dude who helped me a ton. Now he is teaching psychology overseas. According to him, my sessions were insightful and a good experience, to which I can easily say same went to me. Well, this is something that my therapist says he's going to use that I once said. I have to learn how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. A million things and so much more. That sometimes just sitting there and just saying I'm here for you meant more than any of my other stupid change words. That despite how much trauma they've endured, they've managed to be beyond resilient and still see the best in people. I had a 6-year-old client hold up his pointer finger on one hand and his middle finger on the other. Look quizzically at both of them. Then he held up his pointer finger and solemnly stated that this finger was okay. And then he held up his middle finger and said this is a bad one. I honestly didn't know what to say to that. I mean, he was totally right in the sense that pointing one of those fingers gets a huge reaction. It was one hell of a moment holding the space and realizing I had absolutely nothing to say to that. That gender dysphoria is incredibly debilitating. I have always thought it was just being confused and unsure about your body and that it was mild. But I was way wrong. I had a biological teenage girl, but goes by he, him, his, crying in front of me last night and was very suicidal. We were on the topic about how he doesn't do morning or evening hygiene and he said something along the line of, "You don't know what it's like to look down at your body and see female parts when your whole heart and soul knows you're a boy. I'm just as sure that I'm a boy as you're just as sure you're a girl." And that's that. Shook my whole perspective on gender dysphoria. This kid even has trouble wiping after going to the bathroom for the same reason. It hurts to see him like this. Edit. Of course I knew before that it was debilitating, but you don't really know until you see it right in front of you. It's my clients with the toughest challenges or the deepest of depression when they keep coming back, but for a long while it feels like so little progress is being made, and then they thank you. Or say that therapy has made such a difference for them, or when they say they think about what I would say in a difficult moment. Or they remember an important skill I taught them. It feels so good. We worked so hard together in this situation. And we begin to see a difference in how they are doing that feels deeply rewarding. I also think about the various clients of mine that have died. For various reasons. And while I feel sadness about the loss of each one, I also think about the beauty each and every one of them had and brought into this world. And how I had the privilege of their sharing such sacred time with me. That is something I will never not treasure. My teenage clients are how I learned about Reddit. One day, I was feeling very bad at work. Because of something that happened outside of work. I was walking around the dining room getting dishes to wash. When an old woman, a regular, saw the look on my face and told me I looked very nice today. She gave me a genuine compliment. In an attempt to cheer me up. I learned that customers can most definitely pick up on how you're feeling. Even when you don't make it evident. Especially if it's a negative feeling. You should always leave your baggage at the door. And enjoy your day at work. I am so thankful she was compassionate enough to try to cheer me up. Instead of commenting on how I didn't look happy. Or wasn't working fast enough. Or complained to the owner. Definitely learned a good lesson that day. I work in mental health for youth. There's this kid. He suffers from depression and social anxiety pretty badly. We were on a field trip and he had some spending money for soda. He came back into the bus and said I was 10 cents short, but the lady at the register gave it to me anyway. I'm glad people still do good things in the world. Just the thought of a small 10 cents carrying the weight of doing good in the world was awesome to me. Especially to see someone, a young teenager no less, to look with such positivity about that. We need to aspire to be more like this kid. So many of the patients at an inpatient psych hospital have made their way around the resources so many times that they all have an amazing wealth of short one-liners. Honestly, more than any particular lesson. These really stand out. More of them than you could ever find on an Instagram. Not said out of slight, but perspective, and more meaningful because you know someone has wagered their entire life on the assumption there is value in it and the hope that they can live in a way that is true to it. I'm an impractical perfectionist. If I can't sew something my way, the perfect way, I won't bother doing it. For example, if there's a pile of dishes, I can't just do one or a portion of it. It's all or nothing, and if I don't think I have time to do them, I just push it aside. So my therapist was trying to make me understand and accept the notion of half-assing things and that it was going to be alright. I still can't do it. Thank you to everyone who has taken the time to thoughtfully reply on here. I did not realize how popular this would get. Ask for help. You're not an island. How to move forward with grief. Rather than getting past or moving on from grief. The difference being learning to keep a person and their memory with you as a positive force. Rather than treating it as something toxic you need to abandon or forget. A client who had come in for anger management said that he had come to understand his anger by observing his dogs. One day when his dogs were barking and he was getting angry at them, he realized that they were just doing what dogs do because they were frightened or hungry or aware of something. He started seeing people this way. Joe was doing Joe behavior and Jean was doing Jean behavior. It struck me as a great way to gain perspective on the idiocy of the world. Those that give a damn succeed. I've worked with so many clients, and those that are committed to doing the work, and this work may be some of the toughest, tend to succeed. Ones that don't give a damn or expect me to find that miracle answer without raising a finger on their end don't get that far in progress. Not a therapist, but a client. And likely will be a lifelong client. I've taught my last 2 therapists about the spoon theory. Especially as a kid. My therapists would spend a lot of time trying to quantify emotional mental energy and their limits. But not really succeeding in a way that seemed to stick out or connect hard. And it wasn't until the height of Tumblr that I learned about the spoon theory. And so much clicked into place. Everyone has different amounts of spoons. Differing day to day. And every activity had a cost. And while you can borrow from tomorrow, ing trust in a bee, and you have to balance your spoon spending for your own good. It's helped me in so many different ways. And it's amazing to have introduced 2 therapists to the idea. And to think that it's something they can use to help and connect with more clients. Maybe it's a little thing. But it's made me feel really good and really proud of the progress I've made. And good that I've spread something that can be helpful that much farther. So it can spread and help juice that many more people. Used to work with kids with mental health problem. The thing that has stick with me the most was what a teenager with autism once said to me. Sometime I feel really bad because the weatherman on TV tell me it'll rain tomorrow, and most of the time he's right, but sometime he's wrong and it's sunny. I guess it must be the same for mom and the doctor. It changed a lot in the way I've lived my life. Of course there are those select few clients that stand out and stick with you throughout your career. But the most influential impact tends to be experienced on a broader scale. You learn to keep your struggles in perspective and recognize that sometimes it really could be worse. Imagine if each of us carried our pain and burdens in a knapsack and were instructed to put all of our bags in one huge collective pile. More often than not, I'd still reach for my bag over anyone else's. There's a lot of evil in the world. But I'm reminded each and every day that the human capacity for healing far exceeds the capacity for hurt. LCPC from Illinois over here. I counsel high school kids primarily. One of them said you can be on TikTok and not post anything. You can just laugh at your friends. I thought this was full of insight for a 15-year-old. They taught me how to rethink all social media. I've learned so much from my clients. The true beauty of strength and resiliency never ceases to amaze me. It is powerful to watch. Not a specific client, but the population I'm currently working with, adolescents and young teens in residential treatment. All with mental health issues and many with autism. Many of the kids I work with are struggling with skill deficits as much as they are with mental health. They've taught me that it's okay not to have a direction for session or even to have a conversation about anything in particular. For example, taking interest while one of my younger kids played with bugs was therapeutic because 1, she felt heard and understood and like her interests were important. And 2, she got 30-45 minutes of practice focusing on one topic, rather than jumping from thing to thing. We also spent a lot of our sessions cleaning her room and folding her clothes to practice organizing, focusing, and multi-step processes. I struggle a lot with being creative with my sessions and rely way too much on traditional talking and processing. But many of my most successful sessions are doing something besides processing. Client here and counseling student. After my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer, I was depressed and relying on sleeping pills. I went to go seek professional help. I work for a school district, so we have our very own licensed therapist, who happens to be my boss. He had no clue what was going on or why I was even there as a client and not his employee. Our first session was about an hour and somehow towards the end, I don't even remember how it happened, but I was the one counseling him while he opened up about a pain that he's been keeping as a secret. I've realized that sometimes listening to the other person can be very powerful. Also asking them how they are doing. That the past are just stories we tell ourselves and cannot hurt us if we don't let them. It's not been a single client, but I feel like my clients teach me how to be a human. I firmly believe that the most powerful thing I do is provide a loving environment. Watching people heal in that space allows me to understand that everyone needs compassion. I, luckily, can do it part of that. It's okay to sit in discontent. The longer you do, the more time your brain has to process it and the possible outcomes. 9 times out of 10, the more outcomes you think of, the more time you'll have to think and be inundated with the positive ones. Not a therapist yet, currently in grad school to become an MFT. But I had an awesome therapist who helped me through an incredibly rough patch a few years ago, and when we had our final session, spoiler alert, I sobbed. He looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "Well, yikes on bikes 32. You've come so far. And watching your transformation has been wonderful. You've taught me so much about the human capacity for empathy and forgiveness. And in my 30 years of practice, I hope to carry that lesson for another 30. I'm sure this sounds like fodder for our therapist, but it simultaneously humbled me and made me feel so proud. As someone who cares a lot about others, oftentimes to a fault, and as someone who, at that point, still felt like a broken, fragile idiot. His words meant the world to me. I'll never forget them. And I hope to help my future clients feel equally seen, valid, and empowered in the future. I'm currently in my first year of my MSW with the goal of being a therapist, and often doubt my choices and ability to be one. This post helped reinforce why I decided to do it in the first place. Thank you. How to let go, over and over again, of people I care about. So many years of intensely relating, and giving, and letting go. I treasure the gift of being in the place to learn that lesson. It has helped me be a better friend and family member to not hold on so tight. A patient, 10 years old, stole her divorced mother's cell phone to call me and asked who I was having dinner with. I was alone, and IDKY, but I replied that I was with my family, and he said I'm having dinner alone but it's okay. I asked him if I could help him with something and he said he was making dinner and wanted to talk with someone. We chatted about our next round of for 2 minutes and then he said he needed to go. I've never felt alone since. Not a therapist but a guy at AA, after being called an idiot, said, "Hey fella, just cause I don't know the steps to your dance doesn't mean I don't got rhythm." Like and subscribe if you want to.